Good afternoon to you. This seems like a much overdue dollop of common sense.
Doesn't it, Martin? Doesn't it? But please don't let it be another soundbite. Please, I've seen these things watered down time and time again. I remember, there's great enthusiasm to cut bureaucracy. Let's get the police officers doing what they should do. And then one tiny little thing happens every 100,000 incidents. And then from then on, right, we must do this from now on. And then before you know it, all that sort of responsibility has been taken away from those frontline officers who are really going to be assessing what is really worth it. What is a hurty name thing? And what is something that is really starting to penetrate and cause misery to those individuals involved? I mean, we all know those Twitter spats, someone calls you a name or whatever. Yeah. Technically, if you can work it around somewhere, it could be an offence, you could report it. And if somebody is quite malicious and they want to work it in their favour, they can really push this until the police feel obliged to actually react. And we've got to stop that. We've got to give. It's unfashionable, but the front line have got to be given, the frontline officers who are walking our streets occasionally, but are mostly doing this bureaucratic paperwork, to give them the training and the experience. That's the other thing we're losing out on, experience to make those decisions, to sift this out. But then they have to have the backing, because at the moment they don't have the backing. Make a decision, somebody says, I don't agree with that, I'm going to complain against you. That police officer is then in a system of bureaucratic police complaints, because the police supervisors, bosses, government are so frightened of more criticism against the police because of a legitimate complaint in certain areas, that everyone's then being put in the same box. And again, the police officers are going to be, like they have in the last 30 years of trying to cut bureaucracy. Do you know what? I'm just going to cover my back and I'm going to actually report this and sign it up and do it as I would. So it all gets watered down, unfortunately.
OK, Harry, let's look at some of the data to come out. The National Police Chief Council said this week that 443,000 officer hours are spent filling in forms and bureaucracy taking over. That's the equivalent of attending 220,000 domestic abuse incidents or 270,000 burglaries, which, of course, have a mere 6% clean-up rate. I want to hear from you. How much of this is bad policy filtering down from the top brass, and the rank-and-file coppers want to get on with doing actual policing? Is the problem at the top and not boots on the ground?
And you could say it's higher than that even. It's the lawyers run it. I mean, when disclosure came in, because there was a couple of cases where poor policing had sort of basically hidden information that really needed to come out. And that mustn't be the case. But a lot of disclosure, for example, it takes more time than the file itself. I remember they said, right, there's no point in writing a whole file, filling it out. There are hours and hours of work. It goes to CPS and they say, oh, there's no case to answer. We'll do an advice file, or a streamlined file, it was called. Brilliant idea. It was so fewer pieces of paper. We were getting back out on the street. And then there was somebody made bad decisions. Some cases went wrong. And they said, from now on, we'll have this form introduced. There was no feasibility study to see if that form was necessary. It was just added. And people would say, well, I'm not accepting this file up to the Criminal Justice Unit until this file, and this file is now attached. And before you know it, your advice file is larger than the full file. But as far as Twitter and Facebook, you do, and I noticed they mentioned anything that isn't a threat. Well, an idle threat will not suffice. So we've got to be careful of that. Oh, I could kill you, you're driving me crazy. Then that is a threat, but it's an idle threat, I would suggest. But there's other things that if for example, you're on social media, remember that's our high street now. For a lot of younger people as well, it is our high street. And so if somebody abuses you on that high street, it's got to be decided, is it a legitimate issue that needs to go through the police? Or is a little bit of exposure to uncomfortableness, does that build resilience? There's a thin line, isn't there?
OK, Harry, well, there have been 120,000 non-crime hate incidents recorded. I'd like to see them all struck off. Can I finally end with you? Can you please send out a message to the British public that the rank-and-file police are still to be trusted, still risking their lives, and is still an honourable profession and one that we should support?
OK, I would say list the horrendous police incidents that you know of that are repeated to me on social media, on my Twitter account. What about this? People go back 25 years. Remember, think of all those incidents that have been on the front line, of all those police officers that have been sacked, have turned out to be criminals in uniform. And then add 135,000 police officers, good men and women, just like you, just like the public. They join the police. They do it because they want to actually do a good job. They want to go home to their families and feel they've accomplished something and literally help. And so the last week of my police service of 30 years, I was still going to domestics and I was treating them as if they were my sister, my mother, or my brother. And there are genuine people out there. Please don't do what you hate the most, and that is to discriminate and put all police officers in the same group.